I'm Raymond Douglas, and welcome to my man cave. Well, rather toolshed, or my special place of reflection. The Inside Out Perspective takes a look at life's challenges and its effects and asks one simple question: what race are you running? Good day and welcome to another episode of the Inside Out Perspective. Today I want to have a look at a couple of comments I've been answering to on my one video with regard to Taqwa and how the shield of Islam is falling. And this comes from a Muslim I've had some interaction with from Pakistan. But listening to Jay Smith and Al-Fadi's YouTube channel this morning, this problem is what we all face when we deal with Muslims around the world. And it seems to be very common that Muslims do not have the ability to interact with evidence. All they can do is regurgitate what they taught. The first comment is that he asked me for credible sources, verifiable credible sources, and then he focuses on Jay Smith's YouTube channel, and that's not credible. He wants something which isn't hearsay and something which he can go and reference from a scholar. Now, Jay Smith has a PhD in Islamic studies, so that's a scholar, over 35 years of experience in the mission field directly with Muslims. I think that's credible. But let's just take Jay Smith out of the equation for a moment. Because if you have a look at the comments, I gave him 36 different references to the problem of the transmission of the Quran and the variant readings. 36, and he focuses on one. It was broken down in Hadiths. I gave four YouTube channels. Those are the references to Jay Smith. I then gave him 6 sites where you could go and actually buy the different Qurans, which comes from Hatun Tash, his webpage, and those scholars on that side. I then gave him another 12 references over and above the references I gave of people like Samuel Green, etc., on relating to different websites and different books. But he doesn't want hearsay. And look what he does. He goes and he says, I've got the evidence, because all I need is just one true source. And that will give it, that's the evidence I got. And the evidence he goes to is the recitations and the transmission of the Quran to the Hafs Quran. Now have a look at his commentary, and I've highlighted it for you. And if you have a look at it, Hafs who learnt it from, and I don't know the names and I can't speak Arabic, so I don't know how to pronounce the names anyway. But where does it end up? It ends up at Ubay. And that's extremely interesting, because if you go to the Hadith, in one of the Hadith references I gave in Sahih Muslim, book number 6, Hadith number 332, Ubay says in that Hadith, transmitted by Ubay, so this is an authentic Hadith, that there are variant readings or recitations of the Quran at the time, and he took this guy to Muhammad, and Muhammad said, no, they're all the same, it doesn't matter. So here we're seeing the hearsay evidence which is acceptable to Islam, but not acceptable if you're criticizing Islam. So have a look at that double standard. If I wanted to understand Islam and I accept the hearsay tradition, then I'm a good Muslim. If I question the hearsay tradition, then I need to come up with verifiable evidence. And 36 references is not verifiable enough. I need to come up with more, which is a bit confusing. But have a look what he says later. He says, but you're never going to understand it because you don't know Arabic. What? You can only understand Islam if you know Arabic. Which Arabic? Because I know in Pakistan, the Arabic you're talking is not understood by Arabic speakers in Morocco. And Morocco Muslims don't understand the Arabic spoken in Medina. These are the different dialects, which aren't interchangeable and understandable. And that is the problem with the dialects and the Aruf and the Qurat. And that is what Yasir was saying, that even the Islamic scholars themselves don't have an answer to this.
This issue of Ahruf and Qira'at has troubled the Ummah from the very beginning of times, nothing new. And there are 15 opinions about this. None of them fully answer all of the questions that are raised. Some of them answer more than others.
So let's have a look at this Arabic problem. We can only understand the Quran and the Islamic tradition if we know Arabic. So first of all, that tells me that the God of Islam, Allah, cannot talk to the world because the world does not know classical Arabic. And here we're talking about classical Arabic, 7th century Arabic. Now, if you follow the stats, from what I understand, only about 15% of the 1.8 billion Muslims out there can read classical Arabic. And only about 5 can understand classical Arabic. Yet, our Muslim friend here discounts the scholarly record of a person like Dan Brubaker, who's made this his life's mission and his life's studies on classical Arabic. His references are considered hearsay, which is just crazy for me. So even if we have a look that you have to understand Arabic, the classical Arabic, to be able to understand Islam, you're looking at 75% or 85% of the world's Islam followers who do not know. In other words, they're just following and regurgitating what they've been taught without understanding. And that is the frustration which people like myself have when you're interacting with a Muslim. They come up with these silly claims. Oh, you don't understand Arabic. Oh, you can't read this. Oh, you don't understand this. And the question is very simple. Where is the original Arabic Quran? And what do we have to do? We have to rely on hearsay. On hearsay of the traditions of the Hadith. Because this is where they get this transmission from. This whole so-called chain of narrations come from the Hadith. Now let's have a look at the Hadith, for example. Let's have a look at Sahih Bukhari or Sahih Bukhari. Now Sahih means authentic. Bukhari is the writer's name. So Al-Bukhari goes out and he collects the different stories and about Muhammad. And he does this 250 years after the death of Muhammad. And he collects these stories. And he collects over 600,000 stories about Muhammad. And he goes through them systematically, and he goes through them, and he comes up with a set which he believes are authentic stories about Muhammad. The authentic stories he come up with out of the 600,000 are something like just over 7,000. Take the doubles which he's got in his book. There's some which are written about twice. You take that out, it's just over 2,000. Let's call it 2,500. But I can get the exact figures for you. That's not the question. The problem I'm pointing out here is, if you've got 600,000 stories about Muhammad and only 7,000 are proved according to the scholar which you're referring to as authentic, that means 98% of the stories of Muhammad are considered false and irrelevant, thrown away in the rubbish bin. So if 98% of the the stories about Muhammad are false, How can you honestly take the remaining 2% and say that is what I'm basing my faith on? I'm basing my faith on, he told who heard it from, and that person who heard it from is Ubay. And Ubay in the Hadith, which is supposedly authentic, is saying there's variance. How's that for a state of confusion? And I'm just so thankful that the Christian faith is firstly based on the historical evidence of Jesus Christ's death and resurrection, and secondly, based on the eyewitnesses who's writing down the story in the 4 Gospels. And then you've got Paul as well, who interacted with Jesus on a personal level. So, eyewitnesses against hearsay? Eyewitnesses of authentic scholars actually going and touching and reading the manuscript evidence is not authentic? Wow. I find this hard to believe. But then let's have a look at another problem which our friend comes up with. In the so-called hearsay tradition of his of getting the Hafs Quran, we got to understand that the Hafs Quran, Hafs comes from Iraq. And if we follow in the Islamic tradition says that the Quran must be written in the Qurayshi dialect. The Qurayshi dialect does not come from Iraq. That's a totally different dialect. So there again, the Hafs Quran doesn't stand up to the statutes which are put in place by the Islamic tradition. It just falls apart. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, think of it this way. If you're a judge in a court and you're trying to determine what is the murder weapon, and 6 eyewitnesses come up, with their oral stories, and they come up and they say, the one says, oh, I saw him with a dagger. The next one saw him, said, no, it was with a 9mm pistol. Another one says, no, it was a 38. Another one says, no, it was with a sledgehammer. And another one says, no, it wasn't. It was with a pair of scissors. And another one says, no, it wasn't. It was with a submachine gun. In all honesty, can you really take that verbal oral tradition as truth? And this is the problem which Islam is facing. And this is the problem which Muslims cannot interact with. What do they choose to go and do? They don't have the answer, so they go, you're not credible. J. Smith is not credible. His PhD is not credible. So I want a credible witness. Choose anyone. Choose anything, any other book but J. Smith. But I give you another 12 references, 4 books and websites which you just ignore. And why? Because a Muslim is taught to regurgitate what they taught. When the question comes outside of the box of their knowledge of what they taught, they don't know how to answer it. And the Muslim scholars cannot give that information across because they don't know themselves. And that is the key fundamental to the problem of the transmission of the Quran. And I call on you, any Muslim out there who's got the verifiable evidence, as our friends asking for the perfect transmission of the Quran, please bring it to the forefront. Not the hearsay tradition of the Hadiths and tradition. Bring us the evidence. Where is the manuscript? And let's not do an Ahmad Rashid's thing of saying, whoa, we've got it in the Birmingham manuscript, which is only 2 folios. 33 verses out of the 6,236 verses of the Quran is considered as authentic evidence. Evidence relating to the sleepers in the cave of Ephesus, evidence relating to the sun setting in a muddy pool of water, evidence relating to Moses of the Old Testament. That is evidence of the Quran being authentic. It's time to wake up and smell the coffee and make a decision. Which race are you running?